Tylor Megill is the starting pitcher that none of us can quit. AJ Minter makes his spring debut for the New York Mets, and Juan Soto gets the ultimate amount of revenge. Welcome into another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie here with you once again, recapping the news that we are getting this spring. And it's a lot about pitchers, and it's a lot about pitchers that we're unsure of, pulling us right back in. Jack, how are you, my friend?
I'm great, Chris. If Tylor Megill's performance so far this spring is any indication, along with the other guys we talked about, Max Kranick, Clay Holmes, the question marks are starting to fade. But again, it's spring. I don't want to get too ahead of myself. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand right now.
Maybe some question marks about the state of the Mets rotation. No question marks when it comes to BetOnline, the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline, your ultimate game day companion, the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to, how about this, a $200,000 bracket contest. BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. And I don't know how we start anywhere else other than Tylor Megill in his most recent spring start going up against the Astros A lineup. I mean, he's not avoiding, playing a bunch of minor leaguers who have no business being on a major league roster to start the year. This was the Astros' best foot forward. And Tylor Megill went out there and he struck out Jose Altuve and he struck out Yordan Alvarez, and he looked very, very impressive in his outing here in spring. And with the injury to Sean Manaea, with the injury to Frankie Montas, we've been looking for who was going to step up. And so far, Jack, it feels like the guy that is going to step up is the guy that always steps up around April. Always has I think his career ERA in April is like sub-3 or something like that. I saw a graphic today. Like, he has great April numbers. I think you might have sent it to me of what he's done so far to start his career. But Tylor Megill, the starting pitcher that none of us can quit.
It's really unbelievable. Like, it felt almost inevitable when we were talking about what the rotation was going to look like. We were like, oh, Sean Manaea is going to be the ace, Kodai Senga will be the 2, David Peterson the 3, and then some combination of Frankie Montas and one of Griffin Canning, Paul Blackburn, or Tylor Megill. We should have just given it to Tylor Megill right off the bat, because things always seem to shake out this way in spring training, where a guy goes down, maybe 2 guys go down, and the best pitcher throughout all of spring training just so happens to be Tylor Megill, and he steps up, maybe makes an opening day start like he did a couple years ago, or fills in for a month and a half like he's done, it feels like, countless times now. The real thing that I am going to need to still be convinced of is, like you mentioned, he has that career 2.84 ERA in April and March. I'm going to need to see that continue across into May and June, where he has a 5.66 in May, a 6.87 in June.
Don't forget that August where he has a 5.67 ERA. He has another blip later on. So I have the stats up here, and you mentioned some of them. He gets off to a good start in April, has bad May and June months, is good in July, and then is bad again in August, and then is okay in September and October, has a 3.77 in 15 career starts in the months of September and October. And we're joking about it here on the show of, we just can't quit Tylor Megill. He just seems to always be there, and a good start, but then he has the rocky road. He has acknowledged this. He has talked about how consistency is the thing that he needs to find. And truthfully, it's that consistency that's going to unlock his ability to be counted on as a member of this rotation. When this offseason started, the Mets went out and acquired multiple starting pitchers, right? They added Griffin Canning. They signed Clay Holmes. They brought in Frankie Montas. They brought back Sean Manaea. Why? Because the in-house options weren't plentiful. Kodai Senga, David Peterson, probably the 2 reliable, trusted guys that you had in this rotation. But Tylor Megill is not a part of that club. And so the Mets had to look externally to try to fill their rotation spots. Hopefully, Tylor Megill can have this kind of career resurgence and put that consistency together so that he is a trusted member, so that they don't have to constantly be shopping in the starting pitching market. They have somebody in the building, and that's what the pitching lab beyond Tylor Megill is supposed to provide. It's supposed to provide that outlet for the Mets to have these guys in-house so that they don't have to spend money on Sean Manaea if you don't want to, or Frankie Montas, I think is a better example, or to try to have reclamation projects like Clay Holmes, right? That's the idea here. And Tylor Megill's inconsistency put the Mets in a position where they had to go seek out these options. So he understands it. He's aware of it. And I'm hoping for the best because the stuff is there. The stuff's great. It's just that consistency. And, there are times where you get to May and June and you're watching Tylor Megill starts and you're like, yep, here we go. I've seen this story before. Hopefully 2025 is a little different.
Yeah, I think the ironic thing about Megill pointing out consistency is obviously, yes, he has to be more consistent about putting together quality starts past the first couple months of the year. But part of me wonders if the reason for some of the struggles he has later in the season is because he's almost too consistent, as in he's not making adjustments the third time through the batting order. He's letting hitters see some of his stuff early on in not just a game, but in over the course of a season. So when he faces the same batters or batters who have gotten a bunch of tape on what Tylor Megill likes to throw in certain situations, they're able to capitalize on that in the later months of the year. And if I'm remembering correctly, the third time through the order, I mean, it's kind of a cliche now in baseball circles and commentary, but I remember, or I think I remember that Megill last year, that was specifically a major struggle that they even pointed out on the broadcast on SNY was you get through the first two times in the order, maybe the first 4-ish innings of the game, and then you roll around to inning 5, inning 6, and he suddenly needs a quick hook because he's walking guys or he's giving up hard contact. And so I'm wondering if, when he talks about working on that consistency, what exactly that means and whether that means maybe changing up your strategy with how you handle batters in April versus how you're handling them in June. I'm sure that he has already thought about this because obviously it's a long season. He has to make those adjustments regardless. But I wonder what will change through his pitch usage and primarily his pitch usage and how he attacks different hitters throughout the course of a game and the season.
Yeah, I pulled up his numbers from last year just to have them, and then I'll give his career numbers here in a second. First time through the order, last year, 3.68 ERA. Guys hit 269 against him with a 351 on base percentage. Second time through the order, a 4.5 ERA. Surprisingly enough, the average went down to 218, the on base percentage down to 286, but just got hit for more home runs, 5 home runs compared to 1 the first time through the order. Third time through the order, 3.68 ERA. It reverts back to where it was at the beginning. Guys hit 173 against him, but it was only in, let me do some math here, 14 and 2/3 innings. So it's a really small sample size. If we zoom out to the bigger picture, right, and look at it in his career, first time through the order, they changed this up on me. I can't see the numbers on this. He had guys hit 244 against him first time through the order. They hit 255 against him second time through the order. They hit 305 against him third time through the order. His K rate goes down. His walk rate goes up. His home runs per 9 are the highest third time through the order. His strikeout rate drops to 15.1%. His walk rate increases to 11.2%. His FIP is a 6.15 third time through the order. So that's the problem. And so it's not just the consistency over the course of, we maybe make the joke of how good he is in March and April and how it falls off a cliff in May and June. It's not just that. It's the consistency within these starts of, I don't need you to go a full third time through, obviously, but every additional out that you can buy me and shorten the game for my bullpen is going to lengthen this season for the New York Mets. Because if there's one thing we saw last year is I think at times they ran their bullpen. They ran them down a little bit. Guys got tired. And I'm not saying that's a direct result of the injuries that we saw face this bullpen, but just you can't every single night ask your bullpen to get you, I don't know, 15 outs. You just can't do it night in and night out. You just can't. And so you want to probably live in the anywhere from 6 to 9 outs on a regular basis. You'd love it if you only needed to get 3 outs from your bullpen every single night. If guys were going deep into games, that's not how baseball is anymore. But you just need some length. And hopefully Tylor Megill can provide that, and he can find that consistency in between his starts. You know who's found that consistency, though? That is Max Kranick, who once again just continues to emerge as an option. I think it would be a crime that should be investigated by Major League Baseball if Max Kranick does not make the 26-man roster for the New York Mets. At this point, you know what? You know what I haven't done recently, and I'm going to do live here on the show?
Sure.
I'm going to check the Fangraphs roster resource to see if Max Kranick has made himself into the bullpen.
I wonder how
he's in there. He's in there. They have corrected their mistake. Fangraphs is a member of the Max Kranick stands. Yeah, Genesis Cabrera gone. Huascar Brazoban out of here. Max Kranick in. He is back, baby.
I was going to say, I wonder how often they update that, because it hasn't been that long since we last checked, and Genesis Cabrera and Huascar Brazoban were both on there. So good to see. Obviously,
it's a crime that Max Kranick wasn't in there
last time we were recording, because he was actively being dominant again. But yeah, man, I don't know exactly what his role will be, because there is a rotation spot still open, but it seems like what the Mets are doing is letting him just kind of work as a long-ish reliever and pitching like 2 innings max. I don't think he's really pitched longer than that in a game, but for a staff that has question marks again in the rotation, to have that kind of depth in the bullpen and have an option that has worked so well throughout spring training is obviously a huge benefit. And you talked about it last time as well. Like the potential of having 2 different guys that can go multiple innings out of the bullpen is super, super valuable, especially if Mets starters, again, are struggling to make it through the 4th or 5th inning of some games and requiring longer outings from the bullpen, 10 plus outs. Having a guy that can go up and down multiple times, like a Jose Butto, like potentially a Max Kranick, that really helps save the guys further down in the bullpen, your AJ Minters, your Reed Garrett's, your Edwin Diaz's, for the big outs, the 7th, 8th, 9th inning. So yeah, I mean, Max Kranick, everything he's shown so far is just, I deserve to be on the major league roster, and Fangraphs has reflected that. It'll be only a couple weeks now until we find out if the Mets do, but it feels impossible to leave him off at this point.
I don't know if they're actually going to do it, but I would really love to see them try the Butto Kranick strategy that I laid out a couple podcasts ago. I would just love to see how it would work in implementation. And one of the reasons why you might be able to do that is because you feel really confident in who you have in the 8th and 9th inning. That is because AJ Minter made his first spring appearance today as we are recording and as we release this podcast. And for a guy who was coming off of, major hip surgery, looked good, looked like somebody who could be ready for opening day. And so the Mets clearly had a plan here. They clearly were very comfortable with the way that this was progressing. They were taking their time with getting AJ Minter in there against real live hitters. They did so today in a game, and you would have to give it an A+ for the way AJ Minter looked. I know the velocity wasn't necessarily there. It's his first spring appearance after having a major surgery. You expect that to build over the course of the rest of spring, however many more appearances they get him. But you certainly start to feel a little bit better about the back end of this bullpen if AJ Minter is available to this team, especially because he is a southpaw, because he throws from that left side. And last year in the second half, they did not have that lefty that could shut down things late for them if the situation arose. And so having Minter on this team would be a huge boost, a huge benefit. And so far, so good as he made his first spring appearance today.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember going back to that point about the lefties in the bullpen last year, when the postseason rolled around, the lefty that they used out of the bullpen was not a bullpen guy. It was David Peterson.
That's right. And it worked.
It did work, but it was a clear need that the Mets needed to address. And taking a swing at AJ Minter, who, like you said, had that hip surgery, hadn't pitched really much at all last season, to have him come in his first outing of the spring and get a perfect inning, 3 outs on 10 pitches is pretty much exactly what you want to see, especially when those outs were a strikeout and 2 weak groundouts, right? There weren't any loud hits in the ballpark earlier today, but it's a nice sign to have a guy like AJ Minter ramping up, and potentially it is easier now to envision him being ready for opening day, because having him make the appearance and having him perform well means that in 2 weeks, when the Mets need to go to Houston to play the Astros, AJ Minter has a really good shot of being on that opening day roster, which will obviously pay dividends down the road. And then I guess what I want to see next is something from Daniel Nunez. I want to see him kind of ramp up, because he's in a similar spot as Minter was a couple weeks ago, right? We weren't sure whether either of them are going to be ready for opening day, but now I'm hoping that with Minter looking the way he has so far, that the Mets are going to make a similar evaluation of Nunez and let him get out there for at some point during spring training, because those two I could really see being massive parts of the bullpen throughout the entire season.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm looking at the Fangraphs depth chart, and Nunez not listed there right now because they're taking it easy with him, and it's Diaz, Minter, Budo, Garrett, Stanek, Danny Young, Max Kranick, Paul Blackburn is how they set up the bullpen. And I was listening, to you go through what it means to have Minter and what it would mean to have Nunez, and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this bullpen, and I just did a quick little exercise of reading the name and seeing how confident I was in those guys. And listen, over the course of a season, you're going to go through blips of guys maybe not having their best stuff. But Edwin Diaz, you feel really good. I know it was up and down last year, but when it mattered most in the postseason, he got the outs that they needed. AJ Minter brought here, and trust me, we've been on the other end of AJ Minter torturing the New York Mets. Jose Budo was excellent last year. Ryan Stanek, I mean, he was the last remaining member of the trust tree at one point in the postseason. Reed Garrett, Max Kranick. I mean, this is a pro Max Kranick podcast. Paul Blackburn has looked good. He had a nice bounce back performance today from his last outing. And so your confidence level is, like none of these guys are household names. Like Reed Garrett's not a household name. I'm not asking the Seattle Mariners fan to name members of the Mets bullpen. They're not coming up with Reed Garrett. It's just not happening.
They've got Edwin Diaz.
They've got Edwin Diaz, and maybe they'll get AJ Minter, and that's really about it, right? Like that, they're not household names, but this is the way the Mets build their bullpen, and you can see what they are trying to do. You can see what they think they have here. And so I'm ready. We can fast forward. Like, I don't need to see any more spring outings. Like, I'm ready to go. I'm ready for that opening series against Houston, because I want to see it matter. Like, I want to see it when it matters, to see it in its implementation. And truthfully, part of me wants to see Max Kranick in that opening day bullpen.
I think one of the most fun parts about this spring training has been the lack of stress about certain parts of the lineup, because when we were going through the 26-man roster predictions a couple of weeks ago, there weren't really any spots in the lineup that were question marks, because everyone pretty much has their spot. Lindor is going to play shortstop. Mark Vientos is going to play third base. Juan Soto is going to be in right field, and so on. The biggest questions were, what is this rotation going to look like? Who's going to fill those last couple of spots? And what is this bullpen going to look like? And man, it is starting to really round into shape very quickly over the last week or so, with Kranick, with Minter getting ramped up, Blackburn having a bounce back. Obviously, Diaz and probably Garrett and Ryan Stanek have earned their spots in the bullpen regardless, but seeing guys step up and earn those spots has been such a fun process. And not just that, but also seeing what work the Mets pitching development lab has done with these guys in terms of adding stuff to their arsenal, changing some mechanic stuff, and getting them ready to face major league hitting. And I'm excited. It looks really good as we stand right now. I hope, knock on wood, that it continues for the next couple of weeks going into Houston.
Yeah, and it's nice to get to focus on these stories, because like you mentioned, most of the rest of the roster you feel really good about, like Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, like that's the top of your lineup. You feel really good. Pete's back. Brandon's here. Mark Vientos, like there are some certainties that you just know. And so it's fun to kind of focus on these, not to say that the bullpen doesn't matter, but these positions where, okay, this is the one camp battle that this team does have. And you're seeing somebody emerge that maybe when spring started, nobody was expecting Max Kranick to emerge as a potential bullpen option. And so these are just fun, cool stories to pay attention to ahead of the season. I do want to vent about something that I saw earlier today, because you sent me a tweet of Pete Alonso challenging something using the ABS system. And I haven't really gotten a chance to share this take. We should just expedite this and have this in the big leagues this year. Like, this system is working perfectly. It's great. It is making some errors that umpires are making be fixed relatively quickly. And the plan is to get this to the big leagues right now. And I know, slow, gradual. We're testing it in the minor leagues. Now we're bringing it to spring training. And the idea is next year it'll be in the big leagues. But guess what? You've passed the test with flying colors. I don't need a World Series game for anybody, not even saying for the New York Mets, but I don't need a World Series game where that somebody's going to be like, oh, well, if we had the ABS, that wouldn't have been a strike, and it completely changes the entire at bat. You've now opened the door, because you brought this to spring training. And truthfully, this is kudos to Major League Baseball, because it works so well. And because I've been enjoying seeing the videos of guys challenge things and get it right. is you've now opened the door for when in the season, this directly leads to a missed call that the next pitch is a home run that wins a baseball game. People are just going to lose their minds. You've opened the door for that conversation. And imagine it happening in a postseason game, in a playoff game. It's just going to be magnified. So if this is ready to go, just put it in the big leagues. Like, don't waste any more time.
Yeah, based on what I've seen so far, frankly, I'm shocked that it hasn't already been implemented. I don't know what has gone on behind the scenes with the technology and everything, but the implementation of it has been so ridiculously smooth. Like if you remember a couple years ago when they implemented the pitch clock and some of the anti-shift rules, there were some moments that were like, oh, I didn't realize that this was the letter of the law. Like if you remember, Jeff McNeil had 1 foot and maybe a couple inches to the right of second base and got called out for it, or the runner was safe at second, whatever. So that like some weirdness of not understanding how the pitch clock works and batters only getting 1 timeout. It was a little bit of a rocky road. I just, while you were talking about that, rewatched that Pete Alonso clip, and I counted from the moment he tapped his helmet to signal for the ABS challenge, 7 seconds passed before he stepped back in the box and was ready for the next pitch.
What are we doing? Like, get this in the game yesterday. Because
it's ridiculous.
You know, the first week of the season, somebody's going to tap their helmet and they're going to want to challenge and realize that they can't do it. You're going to get at least one. And I don't know who the player is going to be that does it, but somebody, either a pitcher, somebody involved is going to be like, oh, I want to challenge this. And they'll be like, nope, yeah, we don't have that right now. And so it just, to me, it's working so beautifully. Like, let's go. Let's go already. We have the technology. You tested it. It clearly works. Can we just get together, Players Union, Major League Baseball, sign off on this? Let's go.
I think another thing that's great about this system is the way that it's being implemented. It's not taking away from the strategy or the heart of baseball. Obviously, we all want things to be as accurate as possible, but to have a strategy aspect of you only get a certain number of challenges on this and you want to make sure that you get it right. Like it's like in the NFL, like in football, like you if you get your challenge correct, you get your challenge back and you're able to use it again. To have that exist, there's a strategy of, man, am I going to try to burn this ABS call in the first inning when realistically there are 2 outs, there's no one on base, I don't really need to get something going here? Or is it bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, bases loaded, and it's a full count? Like it's going to be a fascinating journey, and I guess we're going to have to wait till 2026 to see it. But there is no question to me that this is going to improve the game, because it already has. It's improved my watching experience for sure, and it's so fast.
And this is where I think, people diminish the role of the modern day manager in baseball. But I think this is going to be really manager dependent, because I think managers are going to instill into their players like, hey, carte blanche. I give you full ability where if you think something, like if you're adamant, go ahead, because it doesn't originate from the dugout. It originates from the players. Right. And I'm sure there will be, data that is given down from these analytic departments to the manager of, hey, we see that there's value in using these in these innings, in these spots. But it's going to be the manager instilling into his star players, like, and any player that steps up for him. This is when it's okay to do this. This is when I want you to be a little bit more cautious, keep these in our back pocket. And so that part of it too is going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. That's it for us here on this edition of the pod. A little brief recap of things going on in Mets land. It's mostly quiet. Francisco Alvarez spoke as well, already raring and ready to come back to this team. My prediction, what did I say, May 12th? I may be a little off on my prediction. He may be back a little sooner than May 12th, but that's the prediction that I put on the record. So we'll see what happens with that. And make sure you rate, review, subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Video version of the show available on YouTube, on Jack's YouTube channel. So just search Jack McKessy, McKessy. We are back Friday. One more episode this week for you. We'll get you ready for the weekend. Everything going on in Mets land as always. So appreciate everybody being here. Everybody have a great rest of your week. We will talk to you on Friday. And as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.